So the running is just part of it. What people forget about is there's other parts of the puzzle that have to be added. And regardless of what you're running, I think you have to have those, big three things in your running, and you also have to focus on strength training and also on flexibility and mobility and injury prevention kind of stuff.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode number 125 of the Running for Real podcast. I am so excited you are here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Last week, we had a whole week of episodes for you. So last week was technically just 4 days away. Did you enjoy those 7 episodes in Mental Training Week? If you missed it, we had 7 experts, one each day, bringing their advice for how to mentally deal with the struggles that we go through during training and the race and after the race. A few of them, though, were more kind of the motivational, kind of giving you a bit of a kick to do something. And I hope you really enjoyed them. I absolutely loved recording those. Now, today is a bit of a different one. I have my husband, Steve, on the show, and I had Steve on the show way back in episode 19. Wow, I did not realize it was over 100 episodes ago. Episode 19, he was on the show. I'm not even sure if I was pregnant at that time. Yeah, I must have been somehow. I don't know, maybe close. I thought it'd be fun to have Steve answer your questions because he really isn't that present on social. You'll soon see why. But I know a lot of you have things you would like to know, and you did. We had a ton of questions, but we did get through all of them somehow, and mostly because you will soon see Steve is very to the point and a lot less rambly than I am, so it worked. I didn't say much in this episode because you'll hear that we are sitting in our closet for it, and I could not get my words out in the first few minutes, just a bit of a heads up about that. Apparently can't now either. I had plans of setting up my new mic that I hope to use for future live shows. And so we had one each that we could sit in a professional setting and get it done casually. But with him leaving for a trip the day after we recorded, it was the best we could do to pass the mic back and forth. And him even doing it, I'm actually shocked. He kind of agreed. He was having trouble with allergies that day as well. So he was trying not to cough. It was just a bit of a mess, but very much ultimate running for real. So, after we thank our wonderful sponsors, Athletic Greens and Body Health, we'll be right to the episode. Body Health Perfect Amino contains 8 essential amino acids in the exact proportions needed for maximum utilization. I've been using it for many years now, maybe 5 or 6 years. And whenever I'm training hard for a race, it is critical to my daily routine, and I can't imagine trying to recover without it. You can get 10% off and find out more by visiting tinamuir.com/aminos. That's AMINOS. Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Steve has seen me doing it. Every morning I wake up actually an hour or so before he and hopefully Bailey does. I make my Athletic Greens by mixing a scoop of the Athletic Greens, which is made of 75 whole food sourced ingredients, vitamins, minerals, and digestive enzymes. Oh, it's also got prebiotics and probiotics, and it has the antioxidant equivalent of 12 servings of fruit and vegetables. I mix that in with 15 ounces of water and drink it down before I do anything else. Maybe go to the bathroom first. That might be the only other thing. Steve comes down, finds my empty shaker in the sink, usually rolling his eyes because I do have a tendency of filling up used cups and bowls with water and leaving them in the sink. He doesn't particularly love when I do that, but it is great. I love starting off my day with Athletic Greens with that power punch of goodness. So even if I'm not able to eat as well as I would like that day, I know I'm being looked after. It's absolutely slotted into my routine so easily, and I love how it makes me feel. You can get a 20-count travel pack worth $79 with your first order by visiting athleticgreens.com/Tina. I love it, and I think you will too, especially with those travel packs. They're so easy to take on the go. Again, go to athleticgreens.com/Tina for more information. Steve Picucci, Welcome to the Running for Real podcast, round 2. What would you like to say we can start with your one question, which is, what does it feel to I can't speak. What does it feel like to have a famous and awesome wife? You can start with that.
I think she's famous in her own mind.
Well, anyway, I just want to actually welcome you to the show because I knew that wasn't going to be a real serious answer there. So, yeah, I mentioned in the intro that I wanted to bring Steve on. We haven't had him on here in quite a while, and you had a lot of questions for him. I submitted the Instagram and Superstars post and actually had a ton of questions, and we're going to try and get through them all because some of them are quite short. But Steve, anything you want to say going in? Where have you been?
Right here.
Right here. In our closet. We are actually sitting in our closet. Bailey has just gone to bed, and Steve's preparing to go down to Jacksonville on Tuesday. So we are sitting in our closet because this is our only space to do it. We actually thought about doing it via Skype while Steve was in Florida, but that just seemed too ridiculous. So we found a time. So, all right, Steve, let's go through some of these questions. Not really in any particular order. We're just going to answer some questions, although this first one, I'm going to move it, Steve. So the one you're looking at, we're not going to do. All right. So we'll start with this question from Sara, which is, any awkwardness, insights, challenges that come from having your spouse coach you? Now, on that note, we had a few other related ones. So I'm just going to tie these all in together, which is, Bridgett kind of asked the same thing. How do you manage the balance between husband-wife relationship and a running relationship? And then Kenneth, same thing. What is it like to coach your wife? So insights you have there, even though we're not doing it right now. What was it like before?
Well, it's like I said, it's always been a bit of a challenge. And I think sometimes we struggle to find the balance. You have to kind of view it as two separate relationships almost. I know that's kind of a weird way to look at it, but that's the way I've always done it, is just separate it out and, view them separately. Like I said, it's not always going to work that way. It's just not physically possible with as much connection as there are to everything. So, but no, like I said, for us, it was just trying to find boundaries and setting aside time to talk about training and running, and then having times where we weren't going to talk about it.
And what were maybe some things, we talked about this the other day, but what were maybe some things that you did struggle with having me as your wife? I mean, maybe you were talking about the stretching and like mobility thing that I'm not good at, maybe because you aren't that kind of authority figure in the same way as you would be a coach for like another athlete, because they kind of not are scared of you, but feel like they need to listen to you. Whereas for me, it's just like, oh, Steve's just telling me, what was your insight for that?
Well, I think it's just one of those things where, I'm not going to nag you about it. If you want to do it and you know how important it is, there's no, if you're really going to get to the next level, you have to do that stuff. Or maybe not get to the next level, but maintain where you are and stay and have a long career. So like I said, I fight those battles every day in my day job. So for me, it was just not fighting those when we came home and knowing that at this level that, you should be somewhat self-sufficient.
But do you think Bridgett's question here, she said, my boyfriend and I are both runners and have about the same level and the same amount of experience. Sometimes it's hard to see when we just need to support the other without butting in and giving advice, and when a little bit of pushing is appropriate. Anything, what would you say for us based on that, or for advice for her?
Honestly, I think if I was training and racing and still doing, trying to be competitive, I don't know if this would work, because I think that's hard when you're both trying to be competitive and be at a high level. I mean, I never was a high level, but like I said, I think the fact that I don't train or, anything at a high level, I think it helps us because it stays one-sided. So
how did you handle that? Like mentally, like, was there any struggle? This is me asking now. Was there any struggle with you, like kind of knowing that, you weren't able to kind of do this for yourself, but you had to kind of watch me do it?
Not really. Like I said, I felt like I had my time, and like I said, just things didn't work out. For me, somewhat out of my control. Some were in my control, but at the same time, I came to peace with it a long time ago about my own personal running career. So to me, it wasn't a big issue for me. Like I said, I always wanted to support you and see you do your best. And like I said, if this was a way to do that, it was great. I enjoyed it.
And then any advice for Bridgett and her boyfriend? Like, what should they do with kind of, you can say your thoughts and then maybe I'll give some. What can they do to, should it just be a case of they kind of essentially don't even ask about it that much, or any thoughts for them?
No, I think you should still communicate it and talk about it. I think you just need to set some boundaries on what you're willing to talk about. And, either it's, I don't want to talk about specifics, or I don't want to talk about this or that, but I think you need to have boundaries and have some kind of rules, and, they need to kind of set that ahead of time. So it's, it's more of a supporting and nurturing part of it rather than you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Because I like thinking about it, if realistically, if you were going for some running goals, and I'm sure you don't need to correct me with this, but like, I'm pretty sure I would butt in way more than you would want me to. Just kind of my personality, I'd want to kind of be helping you, but maybe a bit too much and in a way that would maybe be discouraging. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, actually, each athlete individually is going to be different. And, me personally, I was always somebody that wouldn't want that. I just want to focus on what I needed to do. But obviously, for them, it might be different. You never know. But like I said, that's the hard part. If you're both still trying to run and have goals and running and things like that, it's going to be challenging. And you want to support each other, but at the same time, you have to have boundaries and you have to have ways that you're supportive and not, like I said, constantly pointing out things they're doing wrong.
Okay, that's good. All right. Well, what would I add? I mean, yeah, it's hard for me to think about that because I've never really known a time when you've been focusing on a running goal. But yeah, I mean, I think Bridgett, maybe, if you just discuss it between you, what you want with each other. Are you someone that wants a load of support and feedback, or are you someone who kind of wants to be doing your own thing and just kind of some yeah, you can do it. I mean, I found that guys typically tend to be a bit different with that. We, as women, mostly tend to like a little bit more of the kind of cheering, and men are a bit more just kind of get on with it, but have a discussion and see what you think. All right, Steve. So related to that, let's just go back to Ken's question for a minute. One of his questions is, and Ken is a psychologist, just to give you some background. So he's digging deep with his questions. What do you do if she disagrees with the plan, or disagreed? Because, right now I'm just kind of running as is. So, any thoughts on what you did there? I mean, I know, but what do you tell everyone else?
Well, it depends on why. As a coach, I need to be able to tell you why you do anything any day of the week. But like I said, if the questions and the concerns, I had that was the hard part, was figuring out, why are you questioning this, or why you want to change it? Is it because subconsciously you know that you're going to struggle with it, or it's something that's a weakness and you just want to focus on your strength? So that was the hard part. I just had to really kind of know. There had to be give and take, and there had to be back and forth, but at the same time, why do you question this? Why are you pushing this? And that's always something you struggle with when your athlete kind of questions you. But at the same time, if they have valid questions and concerns on why, that's great. But deep down, they have to know the reason why they're asking that question. And, a lot of times with you, I think sometimes you just didn't want to work on things if you knew it was going to be a struggle. Yeah.
Although I will say that I think I would question you quite a lot, maybe too much, but it wasn't ever like, I don't want to do this, or I'm not going to do this. Like, you ultimately always had the final say. And when you kind of explained it to me, I would always get on with it. Or is that not the case, what you remember?
Yeah, it was more of a case of you always wanted to do more or longer or harder or this. And like I said, I think sometimes I always take just the long-term approach rather than focus on one big month or one good segment. You have to kind of take the long-term approach and be maybe more conservative. And that's where I always erred with you, especially because of like some histories, things you'd had going on. We'd always wanted to make sure we get to the line healthy.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. All right. So we'll go back to Sarah's question. Any awkwardness, insight, challenges that come from your spouse coaching you? So that's more a question for me. I mean, not really, other than the things we've already talked about. We haven't really mentioned the fact that, I would kind of, before I had Bailey, I had quite bad insomnia. And so I would often be struggling to fall asleep at night, and my mind would start going. And, we'd maybe been lying in bed for about 20 minutes. Is that about right? Yeah. About 20 minutes, and something would like come into my head about maybe a workout I had coming, or something, running related. And then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I'd like ask Steve, even though I knew realistically that wasn't fair to him, because, why was I getting his mind up and running when mine was, just because mine was, but B, what good is it going to do at that time of the night? So I think that's maybe something awkwardness or a challenge that I kind of had to fight the urge to do that. Whereas, and then, there's the whole thing of, you just kind of, like I said about earlier on about the mobility stuff and stretching and things like that. If it was someone I was paying for or someone that I kind of was scared of or something, it would be much harder for me to not do that stuff. Whereas with Steve, I don't know. It's that whole thing of kind of they're your husband. And so it's easy to kind of be like, oh, well, I know they're not going to yell at me for it. And especially as he mentioned, he's not really a slave driver who's going to keep reminding you, who just lets you kind of get on with it yourself. If you don't want to do it, then that's your own loss, essentially. So those are the only things that come to mind. Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I always wish I could be one of those juicer people who got up every morning, stuck a load of vegetables and fruit in a juicer, drank it down as the sun rose, except I'm not that sophisticated. I definitely don't have a juicer. And the idea of cleaning a juicer every day makes me feel stressed, even thinking about it, with all the bits where food could get stuck, and just no thank you. I did spend a lot of my time feeling paranoid that I wasn't getting enough fruits and vegetables. And so I thought, what can I do about this? I was so good at it before, but I've just lost my ability to be good with that in the last year. Notice I said I was, because I do now have a solution. Every morning I wake up, go downstairs, fill my shaker with water and add a scoop of Athletic Greens. It has 75 carefully selected ingredients, which cover the 5 important areas of our health, and the formula builds on the work that you put in, providing daily support where your diet may fall short, like mine does. I've been amazed about how easily it fit into my schedule, and it means I get 12 ounces of water down before I even eat anything, which is how I always wanted to start my day. I just never did. And let me just mention, it does taste good too. It's been months since I started this, and I love the way it makes me feel and just how much stress it's taken from my shoulders about not getting enough in. Don't get me wrong, I still try to eat really well, but some days, just being real, it isn't going to happen. Now, you, my friends, can get a free 30-day travel pack with your first order valued at $79 by visiting athleticgreens.com/Tina and give it a try. I love it. I think you will too. That's athleticgreens.com/Tina. All right, Steve, let's go for another running one. And so you actually had someone, Chip, come up to you the other day to ask you about this. Airport Tina. My community has become quite interested in this. So I've told them that I have this alter ego essentially called Airport Tina, who's kind of a bit mean. I joke that I would like push an old lady over to get to the front of the line. What has been your experience with Airport Tina?
I think it's not necessarily that extreme. I think it's just more you got focused on one singular thing, and you're just, like I said, you're not worried about your surroundings, and you're just completely focused on that. And so I think Airport Tina's gotten a little bit of a bad rap, but I think it's just more of you trying to get through something that you don't really enjoy.
Like to the front of the immigration line. And that's why Airport Tina is called Airport Tina. All right. Okay, let's go for one that's a bit more of a running specific kind of advice one, which is Elise, is that right? I think that one was from Instagram. She wants to know some advice for tapering. Now, they've always had my advice, which probably is pretty similar, but what are some big things that come to mind for you?
Don't panic if you start to feel sluggish or heavy. Those are all things to expect, and don't expect every taper to be the same. You might feel like $1 million, and then the next time you taper, you might just feel like garbage. So I think the biggest thing is don't expect it to be the same, and don't change a bunch of things. Like I said, the big thing with tapering is just try and keep your routine as similar as possible. You might do less mileage or do less intensity or a combination of both. But like I said, don't change all kinds of stuff just because you're tapering. Just try and keep your routine as similar as you can. It just should be less. And the biggest thing is not to overthink it.
So I just want you to elaborate on that a little bit, because I know you, with our training plan, we've, for those listening who don't know, we do have a marathon training plan, a half and a 5K, 10K training plan. And people quite often comment on the fact that it doesn't seem like it's dropping enough with the mileage or with the intensity. And, you know, this is something that I know you've spoken to a lot of people about. Any thoughts on, you know, people who do tend to drop their mileage too low? Like, what have you seen in your experience with people that drop their mileage a lot?
I just feel like the benefits aren't worth the risk of, you drop it so low, your body actually doesn't really know what's going on. And yeah, some sluggishness is expected, but if you drop all the way down, all your body just goes through all kinds of changes where it doesn't really know what's going on. So that was always been my philosophy is, unless you're super high mileage, there's really no point of dropping down a ton. But like I said, you need to, drop down a little bit, rest up, but at the same time, like a crash taper, I never believed in.
What would you class that as a crash? Like, what percentage would you say is about right for maybe week of reduction?
I have no idea. I mean, each case is individually different. And like I said, that's why even with our plans, like it's all effort based. They're made to be individualized onto your own preferences. But like I said, if you're a higher mileage person, you might drop as high as 50%. But if you're a lower mileage, you might only drop down 25%. But like I said, the whole point of what we wrote up was to give people a starting point, give people a thing to work off of. And, as you go through it, maybe you are adjusting it. And like I said, I think each person is going to be different. And like I said, I think tapering sometimes is a bit overblown, but at the same time, yeah, you should rest up, you should back off. And like I said, there's no magic to the taper. The magic is to all the work you did before it.
And any thoughts on long run before a race? Should that kind of stay? I've seen people drop it down their long run to 8 to 9 miles. Is that too low in your opinion?
Well, how far towards the end? Depend. I mean, I guess, like I said, I think that's too low. Like I said, I think you need to have some resemblance of a long run just for routine, just so your body has that one day that's a little bit longer. But like I said, say if your mileage, your long run is 20, I don't think you need to be doing 18 the week before, but I think you can get away with doing 12.
All right. And then on that note, just a quick question from Lucy that said, have you considered training plans that are less than 40 miles a week? Now, we've talked about this, but for those listening, what's the reason that we don't have a plan like that right now?
I just felt like with my background and what we're trying to put together, I think if, it was just, like I said, you can't have a bunch of different individual plans. The whole point of it was just to have, basic plans. And I think you can definitely train for a marathon under 40 miles a week. It just depends on what you want to get out of it and everything. So I definitely think you can do it. I think the reason we don't is, like I said, it was just not kind of in the cards to sit down and write all those.
Okay, that's fine. All right. We'll save the Bailey ones for later. Alex wants to know, why are my 10K and half marathon race paces the same? How do I fix this?
Like I said, a lot of it would have to look into kind of what you're actually doing for those races. If you're, sometimes it could just be, you had a great day at the half marathon, but maybe you just haven't quite hit that day at the 10K. So those two distances are actually very similar as far as to train for. So that might be part of it. And then the other side of it is, I think, finding, out which one did you maybe have a great day on, or maybe was it just, like I said, kind of you had that off day when you ran your 10K. So like I said, it's hard to really say without looking at the actual training, but that's not too far off. Like I said, I would say they're similar distances, even though it's so much farther for the half marathon. Through your body, it's kind of pretty similar. But I would say it's, could be as simple as if the half marathon is the slower one, maybe you need more strength. And if your 10K is a slower one, maybe you haven't done enough, faster stuff to be efficient at that pace.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. This is an interesting one. We'll get all the running ones first. Mike wants to know, what differences do you find between coaching college athletes and elites like Tina or recreational athletes, which, we've only done a few. What challenges do you face with that, and how do you overcome them?
A lot of times with recreational athletes, it's just finding the time during the week to get what you need done. And like I said, when you coach college athletes, it's just, you can structure it. Everything's rigid. They're not rigid, but they know these days you work out, these days you run long. But when you're a recreational runner or somebody that's, a little bit more, your life's more structured around work and family, it's the hardest thing is just finding the way to do what you need and, adjusting the training to maybe just have the, make sure you get the key points and not worry so much about the peripheral stuff and just focus on getting your quality days in. And that's kind of the biggest thing is, like I said, in college, everything is so structured. And as you carry on to, you're the only really elite I've coached. As you're coaching an elite, it stays that structured. You have to stay on that rigid routine. But like I said, with recreational runners, that's been the biggest challenge is trying to figure out a day during the week where they can at least get one decent workout in and then try and save the other big day maybe for the weekend and just kind of structuring it. Ideally, like with my college kids, we never really do a big long run and then back to back that with a workout like you might have to if you're a recreational runner that, Saturday's your workout, Sunday's your long run. So that's always been a little different. But like I said, I think with college athletes, it's more than just writing the training program. It's helping them get ready for the next phase of their life. And, they're 18-year-old kids when they come in and they're 22, 23-year-old, people when they leave. So like I said, that as you're 18 to 22, 23, you change a ton maturity-wise and you get ready for the next phase of your life. So I always view that as I'm not just coaching them. As far as running, I'm helping them navigate college and navigate the whole time period in their life and get ready for what's next. Where, when you're coaching a recreational runner, it's mostly they're coming to you because they want help to reach a certain goal.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And just for those who, maybe haven't had any experience with this or are living in the UK or somewhere else, can you describe kind of what essentially you are doing as a coach with, what do you spend your time doing? Like especially for someone in the UK, they're wondering, how is that a full-time job? Like tell everyone the parts of it that are involved.
A lot of it's just you're doing planning and paperwork and getting ready for the coming season by making sure everyone's got all their eligibility done and their progress towards a degree is right. And so it's more than just coaching, and then it's planning and making sure the travel arrangements are done and the hotels and all that little thing that goes along with it. Like I said, and then, obviously everybody knows with every job, there's a lot of things that people don't enjoy. And you're almost a budget manager. You're given your allocations and then it's your job to budget and plan accordingly. And like I said, that's a big part of it is just the office stuff. And, you're literally, you're running a small business. Each little team is its own small business. So, it's kind of similar to that where every little piece has more to it than you probably think. And like I said, coaching is probably a very small percentage of what I actually do with most of my day. Most of it's planning and, there's recruiting is a big part of it as well. But the actual physical coaching and running the practice is only a couple hours a day.
And what is it about college athletes that you enjoy developing?
I think it's just more kind of the opportunity. Like I said, it's a better opportunity. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with coaching high school or post-collegiate or clubs. It's just in college, like I said, I like the fact that you're able to bring kids along and develop them and, kind of teach them kind of the ways to train and the things they need to do to get better. So I just enjoy working with that. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with the other avenues, high school and post-collegiate and clubs and all that. But for me, it just, like I said, I really enjoyed that college system and the college opportunities that they provide.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. All right. So, Virginie, I've always seen your name and I've never known how to say it. So I'm sorry if I just demolished that by saying it wrong. But how do you find the right balance when building a training plan for someone you are coaching? Are there any staples you put in? Now, I already know your answer is going to be it depends on what distance. So maybe we could just go through, you could give 10K and then afterwards we'll do half and just full. So 5K or 10K first?
I don't think we need to break it down that way. I think there are principles that are pretty much cover everything. Obviously, marathon's a little different, but these are my own personal principles, whether they're right or wrong or have science behind them or not. It just depends. But, my thought has always been everything has to have some aerobic capacity to it. So, whether you're training for a 5K to a half marathon, you have to have a long run. You have to have, strength-based interval type workouts in there somewhere.
What would be an example of that?
Well, an interval workout, just by definition, is, mile repeats, anything from about 2 minutes to 7, 8, 9 minutes long. So, that's that stuff is in there. Now, what you vary is depending on what you're doing. If 5K, 10K, half marathon is how often you do those, the length of those, the recovery. So, like I said, the staples that have to be in there, in my opinion, is you have to do long runs. You have to do some kind of strength-based stuff. So hill workouts, tempo runs, those kind of things. And then you need to do some form of interval type work at some point. And like I said, I think those are, as far as the running staples, those are there. And the other part of it is you have to strength train. I think that is just a huge part of it. And I think you also have to do injury prevention work, which is that mobility and the flexibility and like all that, foam rolling. And, if you have the capacity and the ability to do massage or that kind of stuff, that's another staple to it. So the running is just part of it. Like I said, I think what people forget about is there's other parts of the piece that have to, the puzzle that have to be added. And if you just focus on the running, you're neglecting so many other things that you might reach your goal, but like long term, are you really going to be able to stay in it long? Are you really reaching your full potential if you don't do those things? So I think regardless of what you're running, I think you have to have those, big three things in your running, and you also have to focus on strength training and also on the flexibility and mobility and injury prevention kind of stuff.
Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. This longtime supporter of me and Running for Real has allowed me to feel good on my run for years, as Perfect Amino contains the 8 essential amino acids that the body needs to support and maintain its muscular, skeletal, enzymatic, that is such a hard word to say, and hormonal systems. The essential amino acids in Perfect Amino are in the exact proportions needed for maximum utilization by our body. What does that mean, you're wondering? Perfect Amino is an amino acid supplement that is 99% utilized by the body to make protein, whereas protein in meat or eggs might be utilized by up to 50%. Quite a big difference there. If you're still confused, you can find out more information by visiting tinamuir.com/aminos to learn more and also get 10% off your order of everything on the Body Health website. And they have a lot of awesome products for a healthy and sound body, especially if you're coming at health from a holistic standpoint, and that's really important to you. They have a lot of stuff I think you might be interested in. Now back to Perfect Amino. It absorbs quickly and you can just get on with your day knowing that you have got this recovery process going. You can get 10% off your order by visiting tinamuir.com/aminos. That's tinamuir.com/aminos. And thank you so much for showing Body Health. We appreciate them by your order.
Regardless of what you're running, I think you have to have those, big three things in your running, and you also have to focus on strength training and also on the flexibility and mobility and injury prevention kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And then just with that, this might depend on the distance, but for those listening, whether they don't know whether to do 1 workout a week, 2 workouts a week, a long run every week, thoughts on that?
Like I said, I think no matter what time of the year you're training, you should always be doing at least 1 workout a week, unless you're coming back from time off or something like that, or back from injury. But like I said, I think, obviously the shorter distances, you're going to want to do more workouts. And like, I've always loved the, 3 workouts in a 2-week period, so you have maybe 2 one week, 1 the next. Like I said, I think that you're getting good workouts in, you're getting a good volume of them in, but at the same time, you're not overdoing it with your body and you're still able to get that long run in. And like I said, I think one of the things we've learned is that you do need to take some down weeks or some off weeks from that long run. It doesn't always have to be overly long. You need to have, especially in a marathon segment, you should have 1 or 2 where you come down and it's, instead of being 18 to 20 miles, maybe it's only 12 or 13, not including your taper.
Okay. All right. That's good and helpful. Okay. Actually, on that note, this is good with Mike's second question, which is, how do you balance or decide when a fatigued runner needs a day off or should run through the fatigue? How do you decide when to scrap a workout or drop it to an easy or effort run? Sorry, easy run, not easy or effort.
That's a hard question to answer, knowing everyone's different. And like I said, that's where knowing your athlete, knowing your audience is a big thing. And, I think for me, like I said, if you're looking at your weekly schedule and that is the only day you can get a workout in, you may have to just get on with it. But at the same time, if you know, like, hey, like I'm sick, I don't feel good, just scrap it. If you can fit it in 2 or 3 days later, that's more important to do, because if it is an illness or something like that that's making you feel sluggish or fatigued, you're just going to wreck your body even further to do that workout. So
let me just pause you there. So what if pushing it back 2 to 3 days then pushes it into another workout? Do they scrap that one, or how do you work that?
Well, like I said, I think you have to just figure out which workout's more important to what you're doing at that time and just focus on that one. So I think it's hard to really tell. I think if you're just fatigued and tired, and if you're in a part of your training cycle that you're supposed to be fatigued and tired, I'm sorry, just get on with it. But if it's the beginning of a cycle or somewhere where you're really supposed to be trying to hit this workout well, you're better off making sure you're fit, healthy, ready, and feel good before that workout. If it's a real key workout to the segment, then I think it's more apt to, like, hey, this workout in the grand scheme of things isn't really that important. So I can maybe just push through this one. If it's just an effort-based workout, you're going to get the effort anyway. But if it's something where you're trying to really simulate something, or, get an idea where your fitness is at, I think you're better off scrapping it. And maybe even if you got to scrap a secondary workout that week.
Okay. And on that note, while we're talking about this, I just want to say, so many of you over the years have asked me about me and then also about Steve, if we are going to coach at any point. And we have talked about it. We've talked about it quite a lot. But, this is a good example as to why we haven't really gone ahead with it, because as you can tell through this interview, Steve is very much into kind of personalized, taking the person, as they are kind of learning about them, helping them grow as a person. So it makes it very difficult, because obviously that means there's a certain level of customization and individualization. And with another job, it's hard for him to, find the time to actually do that, where if we opened it up, we'd want it to be where enough of you would be able to get it, not just say, okay, we can have 3 people, because that just, wouldn't really be fair. So would you add anything there?
No, not really. Like I said, I think it's just time in our life with small child. It's just not feasible. It's just not possible for us to do it at the level we would want to do it at. And to be honest, like I said, I don't know when that time would be, but at the same time, it's something we'd consider in the future. But we have to get in a situation where we can give it the time and attention that it deserves, and it's not just a cookie cutter program. And like I said, we did our best to write those effort-based programs to give people something as far as our philosophies. But at this time, like I said, it's just so hard to find the time to do it at the level we would want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. There was a question on that note. Okay, yeah. Jen wants to know, how do you structure cross-training for injured athletes, or is it up to them? Now, I love this because I know the answer to this one.
I think the biggest thing is you try and simulate what you're doing. So if you had, a long tempo run effort that week, you try and tempo run effort. You try and mimic that in the cross training the best you can. So if you're doing speed stuff, you try and go fast, and you do faster segments in your speed training. And, I've always tried to kind of mimic what we're supposed to be doing on the roads or the track or cross country course with your cross training. Now, if you're having to take a long block of time off, you need to structure your cross training to, focus on what you can get the most out of with cross training, and that's aerobic fitness. So you may not be doing any of the faster stuff. You may just be focusing on your aerobic strength. So it's different if you're trying to just kind of maintain for 3 or 4 weeks by something, a small little niggle gets healed up and you get back to it. Well, then you need to kind of focus on mimicking what you're supposed to be doing in your actual running training if you were doing it. If it's kind of a long extended period of time, then you just need to focus on staying fit and getting aerobically strong and staying aerobically fit. So when you do return to running, it's an easier kind of arc back to your body.
Okay, that's good. And I just want to add with Steve, he, I think part of your question, Jen, there may have been, you said, is it up to them? Steve is very much about not kind of passing off people when they are injured. In fact, that's one of the reasons I've kind of brought it up quite a lot over the years and had podcasts about specifically the emotions of being injured, because many coaches in Steve's position do kind of just toss people aside and say, see you when you're healthy. But he's never been about that, and, really does work to make sure he's there for people who are injured, because it's not always fun, is it? Okay. Bridgett has a question. This is a different Bridgett. do you lose benefit when you split your easy runs into a morning and afternoon? So she said easy runs are normally 6 to 7 miles. So actually, I think this is quite a common one because I'm sure a lot of people have wondered about this, especially with like you said, the people who are working and have families.
I don't know if you necessarily do if it's just an easy run. If it's just trying to get the mileage in, I don't think you really lose any benefit. I mean, like I said, I'm not an exercise phys person, or I don't have the big numbers behind it to say physiologically what happens to your body. But as far as just an easy run, you're just trying to get recovery, and I don't think it's a big deal. I know splitting up your long run is not the same. I know that's kind of, not really going to be the same. But I think if it's easy runs, I think you can get away with it. What you have to watch is that it's not something that happens every week, every easy day. Because then at that point, is it really, like I said, you really need to maybe adjust what you're doing if it's that constant of a change. But like I said, I don't think you lose a ton of benefit for an easy recovery run doing it that way.
Okay. All right. Good to know. That wasn't what I expected you to say. I thought you were going to say that you prefer people don't. I mean, obviously you prefer people don't, but right. Katie wants to know, do you think runners can truly get accustomed to and excel in hot, humid weather, or are we doomed to have a rough experience every time Mother Nature brings summer fury? Asking as a Florida runner.
I don't know. I've always viewed it as like altitude training. Like you're never gonna run your best in those conditions, but you can use it as a benefit. Like this is gonna make me really strong if I can just push through. Obviously, you have to adjust your training and not just be silly and push through everything. But I don't know if you ever really adjust to it and become efficient and be great at it. Obviously, you'll get better at it the more you run in it. But I tell you what, if you get through it and you slog through all those humidity days, it's almost like training at altitude. So then when you do get that cool, crisp, hopefully race day, you feel like $1,000,000. So I don't know if your body ever really gets super efficient at it. I think it's probably similar to training at altitude. And we always said, humidity is the poor man's altitude training. So like I said, I think it's just a way you have to kind of focus on what it can do for you, not what it's hurting you. And like I said, I think you can use it as your benefit. Like I said, obviously you don't ever want to show up on race day and have those kind of conditions, because then, I guess you could use it as an advantage on, all right, I'm used to this. I know how to separate my energy, and I know how to moderate my effort in these conditions.
So on that note, for someone, as we are coming into the summer season, someone who is, planned a race this summer, but in all reality, it's probably going to be hot and humid for them. What can they do, if they wake up that morning and it is hot and humid? Like, is this something where you kind of just go by effort? And what if someone's scared of just going by effort? Is there an amount that you're comfortable saying reduce by, or is it just you got to go by feel?
I don't think you can ever say reduce by a certain amount. I think what you can do is like, all right, I need to change my race plan. It's humid, it's muggy, it's rough. All right, I need to, whether it's by feel or not, I need to just back off a little bit and make sure I'm not going as, I wanted to go out an 8-minute pace. All right, well, maybe I'm going to go out 8:30 pace just to make sure I can handle this and make sure I'm in a right frame of mind. Like, so the last thing you want to do is when it's hot and humid is say, screw it, I'm just going to go for it. Because it's, like I said, I'm sorry, but the numbers aren't behind you on those days. So I think the biggest thing to do is just, you have to kind of almost wipe the slate clean and say, hey, I'm just going to do the best I can on the day that's given to me, not in ideal conditions.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right, so next, this is a bit of a random one, but Judy's question, what do you think about doing speed work or repeats on a treadmill versus road? You can remove me from this equation because I've probably given you really bad memories of that.
You never really handled the treadmill well, but I think that's more of a product of your inefficiencies in your stride than it is anything else. I always prefer the road. I think everything you do on a treadmill is always going to be just a little bit different. Obviously, you guys know the science behind it. The ground is pulled beneath you, all that kind of stuff. But I just think it feels totally different on the treadmill. Like I said, I think you need to be out on the roads and doing things on the roads. And, obviously there's times when you have to be on the treadmill. It's slippery. The conditions aren't allowing for it. It's dark. You don't have time. Yeah, jump on the treadmill, get something in. It's better than nothing. And you can get some really good workouts and some really good training in on treadmills. So don't be afraid to use it. I think sometimes with Tina, she'd always been afraid or so against it that I said, I think in times it might have hurt us. But like I said, I always prefer to do it on the road, but I always prefer to do things in safe, good conditions. So if you can't do that, the treadmill is your next best bet.
And I think we kind of learned that a lot with our friend Morgan, who is one of the recreational runners that you were coaching. And she, would work and would go to work in the dark and get home in the dark. And so it was really difficult for her to do anything other than treadmills. So we both kind of learned a lot, didn't we? It kind of was a bit of a reality check for us about, how different it actually is for those of you who are working full time and working a lot of hours or might have busy seasons. So, yeah. All right. So let's go I think we're coming to the end of the running questions here. Emily wants to know, this is a very specific question, but if you are training to improve your times, when is training for a marathon good enough and when should you postpone to the next season? This season, I've been sidelined twice for 2 to 3 weeks. The first time was totally off. The second time, my mileage was reduced by 25% and I didn't do workouts. I feel like I did 75 to 80% of what would be ideal training. For other races, I think this is okay, but not for a marathon. Thoughts?
Well, do you want to race the marathon or run the marathon? I think if you're literally just trying to get through it and maybe, have a little bit of a breakthrough, obviously if you're racing for time, like you stated, you're trying to run fast. And I feel like, 75 to 80%, I think you're right on the edge there where, maybe you're better off delaying it and finding a different race a month down the road where you can get that number up a little higher and you feel a little more confident. But what scares me the most about your question is you were hurt twice in a short period of time. Is there some underlying cause to all that, or is it sometimes it's just bad luck? You turn your ankle, you roll it, or maybe you get a really bad sickness and you just can't do what you need to do. So I would say I kind of agree. Like if you're at 75%, that's a rough way to run a marathon, especially if you're trying to run a fast one or fast for you, regardless of how fast you are. You always want to go in with getting most of your training in. I would say this though, it's rare in any marathon segment that everything goes right all the way up through. You're always going to have those times where you have to back off, or maybe you miss a workout here, or I missed my long run had to be short this week. I just wasn't feeling good, or I was sick, or I had my toe really started to hurt, or simple little things like that can kind of derail you a little bit. So I said I think you have to approach it as there's always going to be some ups and downs with this marathon training, and I'm never going to hit everything exactly like I want. And if you do, that's great. But I think the next time maybe we need to push a little harder or do a little bit more of this or that. Not to try and have those things happen, but maybe it means you're ready for the next step. But I would agree. Like I said, I think if you're 75% of what you need to do, maybe it's better off of waiting a little bit and trying to figure out if you can get that maybe a little bit more consistency under the belt and then do the race.
Yeah, I would agree with him. And I just want to add, Emily, it does likely sound that, yes, you could run it, but if you're going for a time, I would totally back off and go to the next race, next season, because you're just it's not realistic for you to try and mentally deal with not being fit enough and then just upsetting yourself by not running that time. So pretty much what Steve said, but it really depends on what your version of doing the marathon is. So do you want to run fast or do you want to just experience it? If it's experience it, go for it by all means. Just make sure you take a little bit of time off after the race, regardless of taking that 2 to 3 weeks off if you did do the marathon, because that's still, taking a lot out of your body. Anything else? Or okay. On that note, Karen's question, thoughts on managing expectations and knowing when your goals are unrealistic?
Well, that's tough. I think managing expectations, I think a lot of times it's hard. Except when I coach college kids, sometimes they're just shooting for the moon and they don't care about anything else. So you have to kind of talk to them about stair-step goals and stepping stone goals, that kind of thing. So that's a little different approach. Like I said, obviously, I think with recreational runners, I think sometimes other things get so in the way that they feel like they can never have those goals, so they don't set maybe a high enough goal. So I think managing expectations would be just kind of being real with yourself and really kind of understanding, what do I really want to get out of this? Do I want to be a Boston qualifier? Is that what my ultimate goal is? Okay, then we need to set those intermediate goals to get there. So you always have that, what may sound unrealistic goal out there, but you also have to have those intermediate goals to help you get to that point. And like I said, it's different and similar at the same time with the college athlete. Sometimes they don't really have a clue or a grasp on, I want to break 4 in the mile. Well, you're a 450 guy. We got a long way to go. But at the same time, you want them to say, all right, that's great. That's what your ultimate goal is before you stop this sport. But first, let's do this, and then this, and then this. And then I give them those goals. And then they also have, kind of daily and kind of operational goals. The way I view them as is like, this is what I have to do on a weekly, daily basis to try and help me get there, that aren't anything to do with a time or anything. It's, I need to make sure I am doing my flexibility 3 days a week, make sure I'm going to bed by this time every night when I can. So like I said, I think the best thing is to, have those big goals, have those big expectations, but at the same time, give yourself things along the way to help you get there.
Do you know that you answering the question like that, most of, if not all of those sports psychologists I had on last week for the mental training week mentioned something of that version, like the process things. And then you can look back and be like, I stretched 3 days every week. I did this many. So you pretty much, you're basically a sports psychologist. All right. I'm just going to wrap up the running questions here with David's question of just elaborating a bit on the training plans. He said, learning, trying to teach people to run by feel. Any advice just hearing you say it for someone who's trying to understand what it means to run by feel?
I think you just have to, David says it in his questions that it took him almost a whole segment to figure it out. I think that's normal. I think it's going to take you quite a little bit of time to figure it out. And I will say this, like I said, it takes a while to really trust yourself to do it. So like I said, I think you almost need to get through a segment first and kind of really understand it. But I will say this, like, I do think in a perfect world that the whole no watch me thing, running completely by effort, should be part of a training plan, not the whole training plan. It's true, like I said, but where we're at with this Tina's business and everything we want to do, there was no way for us to find that intermediate. So what I think is that I think those plans were written, I know they're written that way because I wrote them, to give you a structure, give you a way. But maybe as you go through them a couple times, you're adding things or you're adjusting, or, maybe not every workout is a no watch me workout. Maybe you have a few in there that you like to do that are different. So I would say that, but as far as the full thing, I think you do need to do a few just completely effort-based segments first. Then you'll get a really good feel for it before you start kind of doctoring it up and trying to individualize it a little bit. But I think the key things are you kind of almost got to fail at it a couple times first, and then it'll start kind of making sense. So I think some of the biggest mistakes people make is not factoring in some other things. They're focusing totally on that, not figuring, weather conditions, how you've been feeling. Was it a really super stressful day? Then you run out trying to do this workout. Well, all those things can kind of make a difference on your body. And I think sometimes just where people would make the same mistake with, I got to hit this time on this tempo effort, the effort scale is based, so you're not worried about that. But then I think people also get wrapped up in it as well. So it's just hard. I think it's human nature to try and force those kind of things. So I would say, yes, it does take probably about a segment to figure it out. And the other thing is, like I said, don't rush it. Just like I said, trust yourself. And then, like I said, I think you need to kind of use other things eventually to kind of help you along that path.
And hopefully in the future, we do kind of figure out a way to get around that and make it, more set up that way for you if you do want to kind of trust in us in the future. All right, Steve, we're going to wrap up with a few questions about being a father or just Bailey. So CJ has a question. How are you enjoying being a father, and what are you excited about experiencing with Bailey?
It's great. I love it. I think it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I think as far as what am I excited about, it's just watching her grow, and everything right now is so new, and it's fun to see her experience something new for the first time. And I know those just keep happening. So I don't know if there's any one specific thing, but I'm just excited to watch her grow, and as she comes from a baby to a toddler to a little person. So No, like I said, I really enjoy being a father, and it's the best job in the world.
It sure is. Well, best mother too. Liz wants to know, how has becoming a father to Bailey changed your coaching philosophy?
I don't know if it really has, to be honest. Like I said, I know that's a crappy answer, but like I said, I try. Like I said, I'm a father and I'm a coach. Like I said, obviously now if I ever end up coaching my daughter, that will be a huge challenge, and I'm sure that. But like I said, I think it really hasn't changed it too much, because I always felt like I tried to be a coach that was compassionate and caring about the whole person, not just viewing these people as scientific projects and machines. Like I said, I think it hasn't changed it a ton because of that. Like I said, hopefully maybe I'm a little bit more understanding. I think in the beginning I probably was a little bit less understanding because of sleep deprivation, but I said I think if anything it's just maybe helped me be a little bit more understanding and patient with people.
I would agree with that, although I don't know if you could get any more because you're already about maxed out. All right, we're going to finish up here, I think, with Alan, who wants to know, this is interesting, what are your 3 pieces of advice for a successful relationship?
Honesty. Be honest with each other. Find things that you can do together that you both enjoy. And the third would be don't lose who you are in the relationship.
Ooh, good ones. I like that. All right, and I actually lied. That's not your final questions. There's just 4 quick ones. I didn't give you any warning about this. I'm sorry. One piece. I don't know if you listen to my podcast. I don't think you really do, but you might know these. One piece of advice you'd like to give the listeners for life.
For life?
Don't listen to my podcast ever. You would know these.
No, because each person's different. But it's for their whole life. Yeah. Be true to yourself.
That's good. Short and sweet. One person to follow on social media and why? You can't say me. I don't think you were going to, but just in case.
Obama.
Obama. Okay, good choice. How do you want to be remembered on this podcast other than my husband?
Hopefully they got a lot of valuable insight on my answers out of it.
I think they did. Would you rather give a running for real moment, or what do you tell yourself on the start line? Or what maybe, I don't know how you'd modify that version. So you can pick which question. What did you tell yourself on the start line?
Well, what do I tell myself now before my team's getting to race? There's nothing I can do right now to help them as far as other than be supportive. Like I said, when they're getting ready to race, everything I can do to help them just is about helping them stay relaxed and calm. And there's no point in me worrying or getting worked up over anything, because my attitude and my approach and my personality and everything on that moment and that day all affects them. So all I can do is just try and be as positive and supportive as I can.
Okay, great. Steve, thank you so much for sitting here in the closet with me. I'm sweating. Are you sweating? I definitely am sweating. And Steve, bless his heart, the pollen here seems to be just like making it, every evening he like wheezes his way through the evening, and at night I think he's going to pass out next to me because he's just wheezing. So I'm sorry to make you do this in the evening when you feel like you're wheezing. But thank you for coming on the show and answering my listeners' questions. Any final words of advice?
No, hopefully Jeremy can edit out all my wheezing and coughing.
Well, we'll see. This will test his real skills. Thank you to Jeremy for doing this, actually, because he's going to be pretty mad at me because this is not going to be the best audio quality, but this is running for real, right? All right, Steve, thank you so much. We will see you again the next time I bug you to do this.
Can't wait.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Okay, so if you didn't already know, you now know that Steve doesn't particularly like being on the microphone like I do, which is also why he isn't really on social media or particularly vocal in what I'm doing. He kind of likes to keep himself to himself, and I love it that way. He is my best friend and my favorite person to spend time with. Obviously, Bailey also is included with this. But recording podcasts with him is definitely not his favorite thing to do, especially the night before a big trip. So thank you to Steve if you do happen to be listening, although we did learn in that episode that he apparently doesn't listen to my podcast. You can find links to our training plan and other things we talked about today in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 125. Next week, we're going to be talking about metabolism and answering that question we've always wondered of how two people could be eating the exact same diet, running the same amount or exercising the same amount, and yet one changes weight and the other doesn't. Angelo Poli is going to unlock a lot of mysteries for you. He definitely did for me. So go subscribe and I'll see you then. Another thank you to Athletic Greens and Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Go get yourself some and then have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.